All right, let's get started here. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Justin Nadeau, and this is yet another Paycheck Protection Program presentation brought to you by Pursuit. First and foremost, I wanted to let everybody know that this presentation is being recorded, so by the end of today, you will receive the recording for this presentation. Now, some of you on this call may already have a PPP loan or still considering a PPP loan. And this may be the first time that you have been introduced who Pursuit is. So today what we're going to cover is who exactly is Pursuit and what is our relationship to the SBA and what truly what Pursuit does, you know, prior and after this pandemic. For those of you that already have a PPP loan or are still considering a PPP loan, today's presentation we're going to be discussing, you know, the most important aspect of this program is the loan forgiveness. SBA has put out over the last few weeks different applications. The first one was 11 pages, which seemed, to be honest, a little scary. Last week they've produced a more simplified, what they call an easy form, which our speaker today will go through the different applications. On top of that, we're also going to go through, how to calculate your loan forgiveness. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic over to our speaker today, Mr. Chris Levy, who has been in charge, has leaded our team throughout this whole process since day one. So I can guarantee everybody is in good hands. Mr. Levy, the mic is all yours.
Thanks for that introduction, Justin. Welcome everybody to our webinar on the Paycheck Protection Program loan forgiveness. I'd first like to thank everybody for joining us. Hopefully everybody is staying safe, and our real goal here is to help you understand the forgiveness rules and regulations so that you can get back to running your small business and not have this cloud that is the PPP forgiveness over your head. So that's really our goal to get today, is to get everybody comfortable and confident in this loan forgiveness application that you're going to have to fill out pretty soon. Just to give a little background about Pursuit, some of you have been on our webinars before, so you've heard this spiel once or twice. But in a normal circumstance, Pursuit is a community lending organization. We typically work with banks and small businesses to make small business loans. These are for all shapes and sizes. We do loans to businesses from a small startup coffee shop to a large hotel or manufacturing company. We traditionally make small business administration backed loans, the 504 program and 7A program being the two main ones. We've been around for over 65 years promoting small business lending, specifically geared towards minority women-owned businesses and making sure that they're having access to capital in the same way that all other businesses are. Through the Paycheck Protection Program, we have worked very hard at providing guidance and support to the small businesses that are working with us. We have approved over 6,000 PPP loans for over $465 million. As the program winds up, those numbers will get even higher. So we've been a very big player in the Paycheck Protection Program, and from that have gained quite a bit of expertise in this, and that's why we're here today, to kind of lend that expertise and give you some guidance on how best to go about the loan forgiveness. Most of you on the call today have a PPP loan with Pursuit, so I just want to kind of sketch out the difference between Pursuit and the SBA. So the U.S. Small Business Administration is a federal government agency that obviously has been delegated by Congress to make these PPP loans. Your Paycheck Protection loan was made by Pursuit, and Pursuit or your bank is the lender of record in this transaction. All of the communication that you have in regards to your loan will be done through Pursuit. You will not have direct contact with the SBA. The SBA is just there to provide the rules and regulations for this program, which Pursuit must follow. So any communication, any questions that you have, you can direct them directly to us. And, we're going to be working on the loan forgiveness application with you. So all of that will be done directly through us. You will not go to SBA at all. Our goal for the loan forgiveness is to proceed cautiously, but to help you maximize the forgiveness and minimize the level of difficulty for you in obtaining that forgiveness. Like I mentioned before, we want you to focus on running your business and doing what you do best, which is owning and operating a small business that's out there in the community, and that's your life. Your life is not trying to understand some of these very unique rules involved in the Paycheck Protection Program. We want to make it as easy as possible for you to apply and obtain the maximum loan forgiveness amount. We're going to make the process as painless as possible, and really try to get it down to the small details that you have to worry about, so that you're not overly concerned with the forgiveness. The one thing I will say is that a lot of the changes that have been made by Congress and the SBA and Treasury over the past few weeks, and really the whole iteration of the program, has been geared towards making the small business owners' life easier with this program. The changes that they're making are an attempt to maximize the loan forgiveness amount that you receive, and they really do want everybody to receive 100% loan forgiveness. The Paycheck Protection Program, while it is a loan, was not made or designed for it to be a loan. It's really designed for it to be a grant, and they want everybody to be able to obtain full loan forgiveness. So all the changes that are being made are really in effect to ensure that everybody is getting that full loan forgiveness. As many of you know, these rules have changed over time. They continue to evolve, and every bit of new guidance seems to be better for the small business owner. So remain patient. Don't think that you have to apply for forgiveness at the exact date that you're eligible for, or that you have to use the initial 8-week period. There's nothing wrong with waiting it out. You're not going to have to come out of pocket for any expenses in the meantime. And really, the goal is to get that full loan forgiveness, so this loan ends up essentially turning into a grant. The other piece of it is that there's really are no experts in PPP. Everybody throughout the country is receiving the updated rules and guidance and regulations at the same time. They're randomly released by SBA and Treasury. Everybody gets them, reads them, reviews them, interprets them, and there really are no experts out there. So if you have somebody that's claiming that they can help you get more forgiveness or get a quicker PPP loan, that really doesn't exist. So just be aware of any schemes or anything that may be out there, and just remember that there are no experts. Going to now shift gears into the process of obtaining loan forgiveness and why some of the changes that SBA made are so beneficial. So as Justin alluded to earlier, the SBA originally came out with this 11-page application, and it was very daunting. I've been involved in this program for 3 months, and I looked at it, and it was difficult for me to understand. So I can only imagine how a small business owner seeing it would feel completely overwhelmed and unsure and unclear as to how to obtain loan forgiveness. So SBA did release revised forms, including an EZ form, which is going to be our focus today, because the vast majority of small businesses are going to be able to use that EZ form, and it's going to be much simpler than the prior iteration. And Pursuit is here to make it as simple as possible for you. We will have an online application to fill out very quickly and easily. So don't feel like you have to go out there and fill out the SBA form and submit it to us. We will have this all online. It'll be a streamlined process. But I do advise you to take a look at the form and the instructions that go along with the form. Read through it, make sure you understand it. We're going to talk about some of the specifics of it today. But the form and the instructions do a very good job as to explaining the full grasp of the forgiveness application. So take a look at those, review it, and again, we're here to answer any questions. Speaking of questions, I know a lot of you have questions. We have expecting about 1,000 people on this webinar, so we're not going to be able to get to every individual question. There is a question box in the GoToMeeting software. Feel free to put questions in there at the end if we have time. we will attempt to answer some of them, but if not, we do have a frequently asked questions page on our website that will go through all these questions and pick out those that are frequently asked, and they're on there. Right now, we probably have 40 or 50 questions up on our website, pursuitlending.com, and you can visit that to look at some of the questions and obtain further guidance about the forgiveness application process. So our focus today is going to be on SBA Form 3508EZ, and the reason for that is that I believe that the vast majority of businesses are going to qualify to use this form, and it's very simple to fill out, and it makes it that much easier to obtain that full forgiveness that we're striving for here. The key to utilizing SBA Form 3508EZ is that the business has to be able to certify that it fits in one of these three options that are on our slide here. If you can state that you fit into one of these, you are eligible to use the EZ form. The reason why I think that everybody's going to get it is because the stipulations are rather easy to obtain. So I'm actually going to start with option 3 because that's the one that the most businesses fall into, and I'm going to explain why it's going to be so easy to utilize this option. So option 3, the two key components are that there cannot have been a reduction in salary or wages for any employee greater than 25% during the covered period. What this means is that if you had an employee that was, say, making $100,000, you could not, just because of the pandemic, reduce their salary down to anything less than $75,000. If you did that, you would have to use the full 3508 form and not be able to use EZ. Based on discussions with many small business owners, most people were not just completely reducing salaries. They may have limited hours or had to lay people off, but they didn't reduce salaries. So that should be a rather simple one to fit into. The other aspect of this option 3 is that the business was unable to operate at the same level of business activity as they were prior to the pandemic. This is a very broad provision, which I believe that most businesses are going to fall into with the various stay-at-home orders and phased reopenings in various states. It seems like most businesses were unable to operate at the same level of business activity as they were prior to the pandemic.
So Chris, a common question that our team is being asked is, what should the borrowers do to prove that their business couldn't get to that operation level prior pandemic?
Yeah, so it's rather simple. Many people are going to have something on their website where they're saying, yeah, we're closed, we're open limited hours, or these are the steps that we've had to take because of guidelines, which may mean we have to be by appointment only, or we can only do online orders and not retail, or we had to close down our business entirely. So that should be fairly easy for a business to document and point to show that they actually were impacted by the pandemic. I'm going to jump ahead to option 1 now. This is for self-employed, independent contractors, or sole proprietors. And essentially, if this business was a one-man or woman operation, there was no additional employees, it was just a independent owner that's self-employed, they are going to be eligible to use SBA Form 3508EZ as well. So any business that didn't have employees and it was just the business owner that received the PPP funds to cover their payroll, they will be able to use Form EZ as well. The second option has that same statement about no reduction in salary or wages that we talked about before. It can't be more than 25%. And this also has a stipulation that there was no reduction in the number of employees. So this would be for a business that was not forced to close or alter its operations because of the pandemic. Assuming that you didn't lay people off and you continue to operate in the same fashion that you were before, you will be able to fit into option 2 and use Form 3508EZ. So as you can see, there's 3 different options here. You only have to fit into one of them. And in my opinion, the vast majority of business owners are going to be able to credibly check one of these boxes and be able to use Form 3508EZ. And that, again, is going to be our focus today. terms of calculating the loan forgiveness, the one and the biggest change that was made with the new regulations was extending the loan forgiveness covered period from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. This period begins at the time that your loan was funded. And now with the extended period of 24 weeks, you're going to have much longer period of time to have payroll, rent, utilities, and mortgage interest be counted towards your loan forgiveness. This is a very advantageous provision that Congress enacted in the PPP Flexibility Act that is really going to enable, hopefully, all small businesses to be able to obtain complete loan forgiveness. You now have 24 weeks to cover those expenses, and that longer period of time, no matter how far along in the various phase reopenings you are, you should still have enough time to hit those expenses in order to obtain forgiveness.
Hey, Chris, I got another question that we're asked a lot is, this new rule came into play as of June 5th. There may be some people on this phone call that got a PPP loan prior to June 5th, where it was only an 8-week period. Is there anything that the borrowers need to do to make sure that they're qualified for 24 weeks, or is it 24 weeks across the board?
Yep, so this provision dates back all the way to the beginning of the program. So when Congress enacted it, they said that it's retroactive to the beginning of the program. So every PPP borrower, no matter what their approval date was, will be able to reap the benefits of the 24-week forgiveness period. So that's a very important distinction that really helps all of the businesses. And again, goes to my point that Congress really does want every business to be able to obtain full loan forgiveness. The other change that was made is the minimum amount required to be spent on payroll costs. The prior rules required at least 75% of the loan be used for payroll. That has been reduced to 60% going forward. Again, this is all retroactive for all PPP borrowers. The remaining up to 40% of the loan can be used for rent or lease payments, utilities, and mortgage interest. You do not have to use all of these categories. You could have 100% of it be used for payroll. And frankly, that may be the easiest and simplest way to obtain forgiveness. Now with the extended 24-week period, most businesses are probably going to be able to hit the payroll to cover the full amount of the loan, and that way that's the only documentation that you'll have to provide. You don't have to worry about the rent, utility, and mortgage interest if you're able to obtain full forgiveness through payroll. So that's one way to ease on the documentation requirements and to make it easier on yourself as you're applying for forgiveness.
So Chris, as you just said, that prior to this change, the payroll cost that are eligible for forgiveness had to be allocated of 75%. It's now changed to 60%. And previously, if you did not reach that 75%, the loan wasn't eligible for forgiveness. Does that mean the same thing for the 60%, or is this something that you'll touch on later in the presentation?
No, that's a really good question, Justin. And Congress clarified this in the Flexibility Act. There is no minimum forgiveness amount. You can obtain partial forgiveness. So they actually sketched out examples of if you had a payroll of $100,000 before, and that was 60% of your loan, and you were only able to reach, say, $95,000 in payroll, that would just mean that your maximum forgivable amount would be 95% of the loan. So it would be prorated, and you'd still able to obtain partial forgiveness. It's not an all or nothing application here. So in the event that for whatever reason a business cannot obtain the full forgiveness or cannot meet that minimum threshold of 60% for payroll, they still will be able to obtain partial forgiveness based on the proration of that figure. I'm just going to briefly touch on how to calculate these various expenses, including payroll costs. So this is the same calculation that was used on your initial application for the PPP loan. So this is salaries, wages, commissions, does include tips, vacation time, sick leave, healthcare benefits, retirement benefits, and payment of state and local taxes. It does create a maximum to any individual employee of $100,000. It does not include federal payroll taxes. It does not include employees who are outside of the United States. and it does not include sick leave from the Family's First Coronavirus Response Act. A big question that we get is, can you include independent contractors in your payroll costs? And the answer to that question is no. Only salaried W-2 employees are able to count towards that amount. Independent contractors who are paid via 1099 would not count towards your business's payroll costs. On the flip side of that, an individual who is an independent contractor and receives a 1099, they may be eligible to apply for a PPP loan themselves.
So Chris, another common question we get is, we say that the maximum compensation is $100,000. Can you define exactly what compensation means in that sentence?
Yep, so that compensation refers to their gross wages. It does not include any additional healthcare benefits, retirement benefits, or things that are included on top of that. That's actually their cash compensation, their gross wage as an employee. Another important thing with that is the distinction between payroll taxes. So the employer, the gross pay that is paid to the employee, there's obviously withholdings there for payroll taxes. That's the employee paying their federal taxes. Those are still able to be included. What's not able to be included is the employer side payroll taxes that the employer is paying. So those are a separate tax on top of the normal gross wages, and that cannot be included. Many of the payroll providers out there, like ADP, Paychecks, those companies will have kind of a platform for you to utilize to figure out what your payroll costs are. We saw a lot of that on the application side, and they're also going to be having those for the forgiveness side as well. So if you do use a third-party payroll company, they will have forms that'll make it very simple to apply for loan forgiveness as well. So they'll be able to assist in that calculation. And like I said, this is the same calculation that was used for the original application. So there should be, very minimal issues in trying to figure out this again. And also with the longer 24-week forgiveness period, you're going to have such a long amount of time to beef up that payroll and to get it to at least reach your loan amount, that it should be rather easy to calculate this, and you shouldn't have to be doing any deep investigation trying to find costs in order to meet the forgiveness amount because of that longer length of time that you have. The other aspect of this is businesses that don't have employees and don't have a payroll. These are self-employed individuals. Many times they're filing on Schedule C of their personal tax return. They may be a single member LLC or a partnership, and where they get self-employment income. This calculation is going to be the same as it was on the application. So a Schedule C filer will take that net profit, they'll divide it by 12 and get their average monthly payroll. To obtain forgiveness, the SBA is putting out there what they call the owner compensation replacement, and that is calculated at 2.5 months worth of the 2019 net profit. So if you take that net profit, divide it by 12, and multiply it by 2.5, that will be the owner compensation replacement figure. Conveniently, this figure is the exact same way that the initial loan amount was calculated. So essentially, if you were a self-employed individual that you applied for a loan, your loan is now 100% forgivable based on this calculation. There is essentially nothing you need to do to obtain forgiveness. It's all detailed in the calculation, and since the forgiveness calculation is the exact same as the initial application calculation, you're going to obtain 100% forgiveness. So that's a really big benefit for those self-employed individuals out there who applied for a PPP loan. The maximum amount of $20,833 was also the maximum loan amount that somebody was able to obtain as a self-employed individual. So this all works out, the math works out perfectly where that forgiveness is essentially going to be automatic. Everybody who is a self-employed individual will still have to fill out a form and sign off on the loan forgiveness, but there will not be any additional documentation requirements related to that because the calculation is the same. In terms of the non-payroll costs, mortgage interest, rent, and utilities, this slide is going to talk about how to calculate and document those things. So the mortgage interest, any payments of mortgage interest. This does not include principal or any prepayments on a mortgage obligation that was incurred prior to February 15th. That's a non-payroll cost that is eligible to be included in the forgiveness. Rent, this is for a business rent or lease on real or personal property, so this could be equipment. Again, this had to be enforced prior to February 15th. And then utilities include electricity, gas, water, telephone, or internet access. And again, that service had to begin before February 15th. Again, these non-payroll costs, they can go up to a maximum of 40% of your loan amount, and they can be then included in the loan forgiveness. So many of you that attended our prior webinars heard about the various clawbacks that were involved if you did not return to full employment. This meant that if you had, say, 10 employees prior to the pandemic and you had to bring back all of those employees, and if not, if say you only brought back 8 employees that were on your payroll when you applied for forgiveness, you would only be able to achieve 80% of the amount forgiven. The nice thing with the new SBA Form EZ and the PPP Flexibility Act is that employment certification goes away. Now, by certifying that the business was unable to operate at the same level of business activity during the covered period, the reduction in forgiveness rules do not apply. So if you're able to meet those certifications, those 3 options that we talked about for SBA Form 3508 EZ, you do not have to worry about all of those robust calculations for full-time equivalent employees and if they worked 40 hours a week and how to do all those calculations. That no longer applies, and this is obviously a major win for the small business owner. So you don't have to go through those difficult calculations, and simply by being impacted by the pandemic or certifying that you did not reduce employment levels, you don't have to go through the hassle of all those calculations. So again, this is another aspect of the program that Congress and the SBA have made much simpler on the small business owner. And again, my point is they are trying to get everybody to obtain full forgiveness. So another great change to the program that the Flexibility Act provided all of our small business owners. Many of you may have obtained an economic injury disaster loan from the SBA and the EIDL Advance. So this advance was a grant that was up to $10,000 that was given to anybody who applied for the EIDL program. SBA is not allowing businesses to obtain overlapping benefits from both of these programs. So if you obtained an EIDL Advance, it is going to be automatically deducted from your loan forgiveness amount. I have the example here that if your PPP loan was for $50,000 and you are eligible for full forgiveness based on your payroll and other costs, but you did receive a $5,000 EIDL Advance, your PPP loan forgiveness is going to be limited to $45,000. And that means that you have a $5,000 loan remaining outstanding. Again, this is really about SBA not wanting people to double dip in the program and obtain a larger grant than they should be eligible for. The benefit to it is you're kind of moving and shifting that $5,000 over to the PPP loan, which is a 1% interest rate. So even if you do have a loan of $5,000, like in this example, it does carry only a 1% interest rate, and you'll have potentially up to 5 years to repay that. So a very small price to pay for obtaining that EIDL Advance, but just something that everybody should be aware of, that you may not, or you will not obtain full loan forgiveness if you did receive an EIDL Advance. Another option is to, whatever that balance is that's left over, just make a lump sum payment to pay off the loan entirely so you don't have to worry about it, or you can subsequently pay off whatever's left over the remainder of the loan term. Just want to touch on the documentation requirements. For payroll, it's going to be, I don't want to say simple, but at least everybody's aware of it because they had to provide it at that original loan application time. So third party payroll provider reports that are documenting the amount paid to employees, tax forms, typically your IRS form 941 or the state equivalent forms for those periods falling within the covered period. Those can be provided to document the payroll costs. And then, receipts, account statements for any insurance and retirement plans. So these are all the same things that were required to obtain the loan in the first place. So everybody should at least be familiar with those requirements and be able to provide them for the covered period in order to obtain forgiveness. In terms of the non-payroll expenses, you're going to need similar documentation to prove those expenses and that they actually were paid during the covered period. For mortgage interest, you can provide either a copy of the lender amortization schedule with receipts or canceled check, or just typical account statements showing the amount of mortgage interest that was paid during those months for the covered period. Similarly for rent, if you can provide a copy of the lease along with receipts or canceled checks showing that you paid the rent in accordance with the lease during the months of the covered period, or if you have account statements from the lessor that show the payment and obviously that they're in compliance with the lease agreement, that works for the documentation for rent. For utilities, that's going to be your account statements, canceled checks, invoices, receipts, however it comes through for the various utility companies. You're going to want to show the account statement and also proof that it has been paid and that the expense was paid during the covered period. So after going through all the forgiveness documentation and application, the question then becomes is what happens if the loan is not completely forgiven? This may be because you are not able to meet the forgiveness requirements, or it could be because, as I mentioned before, having that EIDL advance may have reduced the forgiveness amount, so you may have a little bit left over to pay. The remaining amount is a loan. It'll remain a loan until it's paid in full. The interest rate on this is only 1%, so it's a very advantageous interest rate so that the business isn't hindered too much by additional interest expense. The nice thing about making payments on this loan is that the Flexibility Act deferred all payments until after the loan forgiveness has been determined. So you may have originally seen and signed a note that said that it was a 6-month deferral period. That has now been extended, and that no payments will be due until after the loan forgiveness has been determined. At that point, we'll know how much is remaining on the loan, and we'll be able to tell you what your monthly payments are from now on. So that'll all happen after the forgiveness period. So that's something to keep in the back of your mind, that it will occur if you are not able to obtain loan forgiveness, but you will not have to worry about making payments until after the forgiveness has been determined by SBA. For anybody that applied prior to June 5th, your loan maturity is 2 years from the funded date. This has been extended as part of the Flexibility Act for anybody that obtained a loan after June 5th, but the people that obtained a loan before June 5th will have an opportunity to negotiate with your lender to potentially extend that up to 5 years. We're not going to consider any extensions of loan maturity until after the loan forgiveness amount has been determined. So it's nothing that we're not going to negotiate right now, and nothing that you have to do if you're looking to extend that period. But after the forgiveness is determined, we can have those conversations with borrowers if they have a sizable balance left over to extend that period out to 5 years. I just want to touch briefly on how to maximize your loan amount. One thing we always want to keep in mind that Pursuit, we're here as your lender. We're here to assist with the rules and processing of your application. We're not a business advisor, so we can't sit there and provide advice to you on exactly how to manage your business operations, when to bring employees back, how to pay them. But we will provide the rules to you. We're going to try to provide as much guidance and assistance as we can, but just keep in mind that we're not an advisor for your business. We recommend that if you're looking for some of that more detailed business advice, speak with your accountant, attorney, business advisors, or reach out to a small business development center that are throughout the country to assist you with some of these broader questions. People get kind of nervous about the adequacy of their record keeping. There's obviously significant rules that are involved in applying for loan forgiveness that need to be met. But if your business has been adequate keeping records throughout, that's going to continue on during the forgiveness period. So don't feel like you have to do anything out of the ordinary, but keep adequate records. Make sure you keep copies of all those expenses and cancel checks related to anything that you're going to look to obtain forgiveness for, and that way you'll have them available as part of your loan forgiveness application. So that concludes our presentation on the PPP loan forgiveness. We have some very good resources. I mentioned before our website, pursuitlending.com. All of the information in today's presentation will be posted on our website within the next day or so. We have a long list of frequently asked questions about forgiveness that is available that borrowers can look at and obtain some of these common answers. In regards to the forgiveness application, ours is not available yet, and frankly, no lender should be. The SBA has not released all of the rules yet. We expect additional guidance will be issued. They haven't even told us as the lender what to do if we do receive a forgiveness application. So even if we received one from you and it was all good and you could get the entire loan forgiven, we have no way of transmitting that information to SBA just yet. So there's nothing for you to do. Just continue to manage and operate your business, keep track of those expenses. And then as soon as the forgiveness application is available and that we have all the rules necessary to administer it from SBA, we'll be releasing that. Like I mentioned, it'll be an easy online application for you to fill out. And we will obviously be in contact with all of our borrowers via email about any updates to the program. Again, our website is a great resource to find things. If you have any additional questions that were not answered, like I mentioned before, you can post them in the chat and we will add them to our forgiveness frequently asked questions page. But you can also email loanforgiveness@pursuitlending.com with any specific questions that you may have, and our team will do our best to answer your question or at least point you in the right direction, whether that be a page on our website or simply say that we may not be able to answer it and that you should contact your accountant or attorney to get that, just because it's a question that's too specific for us as your lender to be able to answer. But I know I keep harping on this. SBA, Congress, Treasury, their goal here is to get everybody complete loan forgiveness. Our goal at Pursuit is to help you obtain that full loan forgiveness amount. So continue to follow along with the resources that we're providing. And again, everybody's looking to benefit the small business owner. So we're here to help the best that we can. I encourage you to reach out with any questions that you have. And I really appreciate everybody taking the time to listen in today, and hope that this has provided some clarity to you and hopefully some relief that this isn't going to be too difficult and that you can get back to managing the day-to-day operations of your business and not worrying about this PPP forgiveness cloud that's hanging over everybody's head. So everybody, please stay safe out there, and thank you again for attending today.